I'm going to keep it very short and sweet and get over to Heinz as quickly as he can. But if anybody's curious about IMC and who we are, what we do, there's plenty of us around to talk to. If I could try and put it in one sentence, we trade financial instruments on all the stock exchanges in the world, and we do this in a highly automated way, use a lot of technology, and Java definitely being a very important part of that. So there's a fair few of our own Java engineers walking around, so feel free to reach out to anybody and have a chat and ask questions. We had Heinz give a few trainings here over the summer, and he was here in, I think it was 2021 as well for a meetup at some point. No, 19, it was that long ago. We've missed you so much. All right, well, we're really happy to have you here, so thank you so much. So yeah, quick round of applause for Heinz, and have a great evening, everyone.
I was actually going to change the whole talk because Kirtan's here, so I was going to use NetBeans as an IDE instead of IntelliJ, but unfortunately, it didn't really. It's a very old version. It's like version 13, so it's like 5 years ago or something. All right, so thank you very much for joining, and thanks to IMC for hosting me and us. So we've got 45 minutes to really look at IntelliJ just to become more productive in it, and let's get started. So my story was this: I used to program with Borland JBuilder, and Borland JBuilder was like, how many of you have used Borland JBuilder? Okay, wow. One person, that's a lot, that's quite a few. This was a very, very old program. I mean, when we were younger, Borland was the company for writing developer IDEs. And then they had JBuild and we used it, and it was absolutely horrible. And then I used Eclipse for a year in 2002, and I was absolutely blown away by it. It was absolutely incredible program in comparison to JBuilder, in comparison to Emacs or VI. It was absolutely amazing. And then I had heard about IntelliJ for a while. I'd heard that this was the most amazing program and could make draft beer, basically. In Amsterdam, you'd say it can roll a joint, in Amsterdam. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say that in Amsterdam. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. It was, it could do amazing things, and it was there to go and it could help with refactoring very horrible, messy code. And I had to work on a project which was working with horrible, messy code. And so I downloaded it. In those days, it wasn't free, you had to pay for it. And I used it for 30 days, and then I bought it. And I always say I paid twice, because first of all, I paid for the license. I paid for one license only in my life. It was in 2003. But also, I was being paid per hour. Right? If you're being paid per hour, you want to use Notepad. You don't use IntelliJ. You want to be as slow as possible. And so I was actually being paid less for the work I was producing, and I had to pay for the license, so like paying twice. But the whole process of working with it was so much more pleasant. I came home, I was in a better mood, could play with the kids, they were happy, and so, yeah, I started using it. I am not employed by IntelliJ. I've never received a cent from IntelliJ. I do get a free license because I'm a Java champion, but any Java champion gets that. So the first thing that I found really useful is this JetBrains toolbox. So if you don't have that, download that. It's really useful because it keeps your ID up to date. Before they had that, I would always have to try and download the next version, and keeping things up to date was really tricky. With this one also, you can have multiple versions installed at the same time and keep things sort of working well together. So this is definitely something I recommend you use. And then setting up IntelliJ, the most popular scheme, and I did a survey, a very, very a scientific Twitter survey, and it turns out that most people like the Darkular scheme. But if you have errors, that's kind of sometimes can be hard to see because you have this color scheme where you don't really see red very well. So if you sort of have and I'll zoom into this in a second, but if you open a file and you make a typo, then what happens is that, okay, I've actually set it up already to be super bright red, but the normal Darkular look like this. Let me show you that's the editor color scheme, the Darkular. So this is what the normal font looks like. So it's not as obvious that there's a mistake. In fact, it's on the line method. Let's drag it down a bit so you can see it better. But this is like the error, and it's like, there might be an error. So you can't really see very well that there's an error. And it's kind of frustrating when you're looking for a mistake and it's not that obvious. If you have a white background, it's very obvious what the mistake is. So if you have like a light scheme, IntelliJ light, you'll see, boom, there's your error. So it's very obvious where the mistake is, everywhere the red line is. So that's something I did. I set up my own scheme, just a variation of the normal scheme, derivative of the Darkular scheme, which simply makes that a little bit more obvious, and also increase the font size a bit. Now, you notice that it's not really a good size for such a big room. So there's a shortcut, Control tilde, that you can use for changing the look and feel. You can see here, this is very, very small. I can hardly read it, and I'm standing in front of it. But at the bottom, there's a zoom, and you can make it bigger. So 150, for example, is a bit bigger. So you can see, oh, that went away again. Let's do that again. 150, so now everything is bigger. The fonts are bigger, the IDE is bigger. Everything is a lot bigger and easier to read. So I always recommend that you, especially if you're doing a presentation like this, you want to make it so that the size of the fonts is the average age in the room. Then you're about right with the size of the font. So here we go. This is a sort of nice font. You can read it at the back probably as well. All right. So this is something, if you're giving a presentation, make sure that your fonts is easy to look at. Also, there are different types of key maps. Some are better than others. I like a key map that sort of works well with my hand. It doesn't matter if I've got a key which is supposedly a good key to use, if I can't use one hand to press the key. If I've got to like hands and toes to get the key right, it doesn't really work very well for me. So the IntelliJ IDEA Classic has a more friendly shortcuts than the standard IntelliJ shortcuts. And I'll show you a few of those as we go through. So what I did was I took IntelliJ IDEA and I've added a few more shortcuts which I'll show to you as we go through here. Another thing which is really useful is camel hump words. Now, by default, this is not on. So if you, for example, double click on label font, or on, I just want to select the left and change it to right. So I double click on left, but it's selected the whole word. If I put camel word, use camel humps words, if I click that on, then, and I press OK, now when I double click on a word, it only selects the word that I was on. It doesn't select everything. So flow, layout, left, flow, layout. So this is something that I find very useful. Of course, you might hate this. You might say, I can't stand this. This is terrible. I never want to use camel hump words. But I find it quite helpful because quite often I want to just edit a part of a word and just double clicking on that then selects that right word. How do you get rid of this thing? How do you turn this off? Anybody know? Alt-Enter? No. Yeah. Oh, there. Hide all code vision inlay hints. So it just clutters my screen. All right. Now, something else which I think they've actually put on my default now. In the very late, I put a clean install of IntelliJ on my machine, and I think it's on by default. I put it off, but something which should be on by default is auto scroll to and from source. I've often seen programmers edit the wrong file. So I'm like walking around helping people, and somebody's like working on a file, and they think they're working on one file, actually working on a different file, because it's so easy to make that mistake. Let me show you with an IntelliJ. So if I go to my project view over here, and I click on, for example, GUI tools, it doesn't actually go to GUI tools. I've got to double click on GUI tools. I've got to like click on elegant frame, double click on elegant frame. I mean, who's got time for double clicks, right? Come on, it's way of energy. You can do far more useful things with your fingers. So if you click on here, there's this thing called Open Files with single click, and then I can simply click once, and it's opened the file. So once instead of double click, much more efficient. You'll be surprised how often I've seen people make this mistake. Also, if I click up here on the tabs at the top, it's actually not moving the cursor on the left-hand side on the window. So you can set that up as well. And as I said, I think this is on by default nowadays. Always select Open File. They've got a new one which I've not seen before, which is open directly with a single click. So this is something, if I click here, this didn't used to do that. You used to have to double-click on the directory to open it as well. So I think they are getting the hang of doing this to save programmers having to click too much. Because I mean, yeah, come on, what else? Better things to do than clicking. So there we go. This is I think something very, very useful, and it should be on by default. I think they've put it on by default now. All right. The philosophy with IntelliJ is the following: is to be able to do almost everything without a mouse. For some reason, they hate mice. I don't know why. I mean, I love the mouse. I use my mouse all the time. But they try to make it so you don't have to use a mouse. They've got hotkeys for almost everything, except for the thing I showed you. There's no hotkey for that. So there's no hotkey for the gear. You have to select that yourself, but with the mouse. But other than that, most things you can do with keyboard shortcuts. And if you go to Help Keyboard Shortcuts, there's a PDF of all the shortcuts for your for your operating system. And I recommend you print it out, put it on your desk, and every day you learn one more. And after about 6 months, you've learned them all. And some of them you can do with multiple different ways. They're not all the same. Often there's like lots of ways to do one thing. But if you just memorize one per day, very quickly you'll become a lot more effective at using IntelliJ, where you don't have to use a mouse. I do use a mouse, but I don't have to use it for a lot of things. And you can actually track how well you're doing. There's if you go again to Help My Productivity, it shows you how effective you've become, how productive you've become. And this was now on my IntelliJ Ultimate version. And it shows, for example, syntax-aware selection I've used 167,000 times in the last like 15 years or something, 12 years. So 11 years. So it's really, it shows you where you're using IntelliJ a lot. But more importantly, it shows you what you're not using. That's actually more important because, great, so I'm using basic code completion 88,000 times, big deal. But more importantly, there might be some things which actually are very useful, which I don't know how to do. And I mean, I learned something new today with IntelliJ. It's a vast program. You can always learn new things. And so I recommend that you learn these things and actually check on how well or how not well you're using IDE. There are search options, Shift. Hitting Shift twice opens up a search button, a search window, and quadruple Shift also searches non-project items. So if I'm looking, for example, for thread, I do Shift, and I'll start typing thread. It shows me wherever thread is being used within IntelliJ. There's a clock thread, and there's our clock thread over there, right? But if I do it 4 times, then it also includes project items, and then it also shows me all the Java JDK classes where thread occurs. So either of those work in order to find the threads. And the funny thing is, I actually found that I discovered this by accident because I had one of those, you know those first MacBook Pros that came out with that horrible thing at the top? Not buttons, in other words, you know what I mean? They had a very strange layout for the arrows, which were very close to the Shift button. So I kept on hitting the Shift by mistake, and this window popped up, and eventually I said, what does it actually do? Like, oh, that's actually quite useful. Now, as I mentioned, I do not work for IntelliJ or JetBrains. I've never worked for them. So I can say what I want. And IntelliJ sometimes hangs up, right? It just stops working. So what do you do when it does? Okay. Here's an example. I was writing some code down at the Suzuki while waiting for my service of my car, And I wrote this program, and I ended up having like a whole bunch of threads running and trying to factorize a number. And my laptop is quite old. You can see that it's a very old version of Mac. Got to a state where I had to physically like hold down the power button to restart it. Okay. And then when I started it up again, and I started IntelliJ, I changed a few things. I ran it again, and this is what happened. So clicked on run, and you can see there down there, it's compiling classes down at the bottom, and it's going crazy, compiling, parsing, loading, and then it sort of carries on for a while, and then it goes back to the beginning, and it says, we're going to start again. So I realized there's a problem. I tried to close it, and when I clicked on close, it says the compiler's running, you must wait for that to finish first. And then the second time, it actually managed to close it. So then I decided to record that and do it all again. It likely happened the second time. And what I then did is I shut it down, I deleted all the local files, and then restarted, and then everything was fine again. So it's got a whole bunch of files locally, and this is such a common thing, they've actually built it into the IDE, right? You can go here to File and say Repair IDE, and always try this first, always do small steps, because you don't want to clobber your local history. Local history is very, very useful. Normally I would invalidate the caches. It takes a bit of time to re-index everything, but that solves most of the problems. I try not to lose the local history, because that is quite useful to be able to see all the changes we've done to a file. Despite version control, this also helps sometimes. Something else, I've noticed they made a change with projects where if you open old projects, the IntelliJ sometimes hangs up. And the only way I can kill it was with -9. I can't shut it down at all. So the only way I could get around that is by actually creating a new project, overwriting old project files, and then it works, and I've reported it, and they haven't been able to reproduce it. So luckily, I'm slowly but surely running out of old projects. Whenever I discover another one, I overwrite it again and start from the beginning. But I've had like hundreds of old projects, so it's taken a long time to get through that. Just so you know, if it just hangs up, most likely your project file is broken. And we had another problem this week. One of my students had something went wrong, and nothing worked. So we deleted the .idea directory, but that didn't actually do it. We had to also delete the IML file, and then it worked. So these things happen sometimes. Just delete the project files and start again, and hopefully you'll be lucky. All right. There is a super key that fixes almost everything, which is Alt-Enter, and that's on Mac and on Windows. And it's like a psychic key. It reads your mind and fixes everything for you. So Alt-Enter, and I was actually, one of my students asked me this week, I was doing something, and he said, how do you do that? Because, for example, I did something like this. I said private final list over here of string. List is already there, so let's try something else. Let's try field. A field. And you see it's red, but then at some point, suddenly it gets underlined. So it starts red. If I carry on working, then it stops on being underlined. Then it again becomes underlined. At the point when it's underlined, if you press Alt-Enter, it does the import for you. But you've got to time it right. And I kept on doing this, and he was like, how do you do that? How do you import it without going to the thing and clicking on Alt-Enter? It's just a matter of timing, that when the underline appears, that's the time when you press Alt-Enter in order to import the file. So it's just a little trick. And Alt-Enter is really amazing. It fixes almost everything that might be broken. And of course, you've got generate code, which most of the time actually just runs automatically without having to do anything. That's Alt-Insert. Actually, I'm trying out this one. There's another one. I'm thinking about control space. Okay, generate also generates lots of code. Let me show you an example of just generating the class here. I've got a person class I'm going to make. So Alt-Enter, Control-Enter or Alt-Insert. We'll do my playground. Let's make a class here. playground.person, and then we're going to put in here a private final string name, private final int age, not allowed to have a birthday. And you can see now there's all squiggled on the line. Obviously there are mistakes there. And if I now press Alt-Enter, it says add constructor parameters and select them and done. So that's how I make my constructor. So very easy. There's the other way is with Control-Enter or Alt-Insert, where you have like methods like constructor, getters, equals hashcode, toString, override methods, delegate methods, etc. So for example, if I want to make a person list, which implements or which has a implements list of string, for example, I'll just stop for whatever, and I've got a private final, see now it's underlined, press Alt-Enter and it's imported it. So you've got to just get the timing right, and it saves a lot of time. It makes it look like you're doing magic. It's just timing. Timing is everything. So if you've got a list here that you're pointing to, delegate, with Control-Enter, you can actually delegate everything to that list, all the methods, and it's now called these methods from everywhere, without having to do very much code. So this is useful if you're getting paid by lines of code. Okay. Yeah, okay, maybe not. Let's not try and do that. So let's get rid of this. So you see there's a difference between Alt-Enter and Control-Enter. The Alt-Enter is really to fix errors, whereas Control-Enter or Alt-Insert is more used for creating certain types of code. Oops. There we go. Okay. So let's go. Oh, by the way, I've got a little gift for those who are here. This is only for the people who are actually here, and the recording won't be available. So this is a coupon for a little course I've written, a data structures course, and it expires at 8:30 p.m., which is not that long from now. Once you've got it, you've got lifetime access to it. tinyurl.com/amsjug will do it, or this URL as well. So, yeah. You'll get a couple of emails just to remind you to actually start looking at it. You can delete those or actually look at it if you want to. The course was for Java 9. I need to redo it for Java 21, but between Java 9 and 21, there haven't been that many changes. It's only now we've got sequence collections. So it's still very relevant. What's also nice, it's got a little quiz in there. So if you want to improve your Java data structure skills, you can do the quiz and see how many you can get right. Some of those are quite difficult. All right. Another thing which is quite useful are live templates, where you can automatically generate code just with typing something in and pressing tab. So PSVM, public static void main, SOUT for print, synthesis smart print line, print smart value, etc. And you can write your own as well. If you want to iterate, iter, etc. So if you, for example, let's do some template examples here. We'll make class templates, and I want to make a main method a PSVM tab, and here I've got my main method. And then I can, for example, iterate over the args, just itr tab, and I've got my footer. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I don't even know if they support Java 21, because Java 21 you can do this, right? Oh.
You can leave out the class as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't support it fully yet. So this is something new for those who are teaching Java, so that you don't have to teach people public static void main anymore. You just have void main. You still have to say what is void, and what is main, what is a bracket, and what's a semicolon. But besides those, you can, and they also want to make it so you can just say print line instead of system print line. But I think that this is supposed to be, it's supposed to work, because this is the preview version. But something else that's happened recently is, about a year ago, IntelliJ used to support like all the versions going back, all the previews going back. So you could say, hey, I wonder what the preview worked like in Java 15. And you can go back, select Java 15, select preview version, you could see like how it worked back in the day. But they stopped that about, I think, 6 months or so ago. We now they only show the preview versions for the very latest of classes. So you don't have Java 17 preview anymore. You don't have Java, you've got Java 21 preview, Java 20 preview, but they don't, even the Java 21 preview isn't complete. They don't have the new main methods, for example. So that's the problem is that it's quite difficult for them to keep up with all the changes. There have been lots of changes in the language. Yeah, you'll have to use another IDE that can support that. Right? NetBeans does it. Okay, there we go. So use NetBeans. Actually, I don't think this is not correct either, because it actually says main is never used. So it doesn't work at all. You can, of course, run it from the command line. You can say Java source playground templates, and it'll run with Java 21. In preview mode, it'll work. -minus enable preview, minus source you need as well. That'll work. It won't work. It should work. Anyway, the point is that this is not supported yet. So we're going to just use public static void main. And we have for loops. We've got iterating over arrays, it_r. We've got normal iteration, iter, and R. We can make streams and iterators and so on. It's really very powerful. And there's some which we use all the time, like iter, for-i, itco, itar, sout_v, sout_m, all of these, just to very, very useful to generate code very quickly. Navigating, I normally control click. I do use the mouse. I find the mouse very useful. And then I navigate backwards and forwards with control alt left and right to bounce backwards and forwards. Okay. I really like using the mouse. I have to admit this. This is like saying, hello, I'm Heinz. What is it? I'm an alcoholic. How does it go? How do they say it? Hello, I'm Heinz. I use a mouse. I apologize. I have to admit it. But it is useful to know how to touch type, of course. But the way I normally work is my left hand on the keyboard, my right hand on the mouse. And there are some keys which are easy to do, and others which are not easy to do. The one which I'll show you in a moment is selection. Selecting code is very useful. If you use this at the right setting, very easy to use. Otherwise, not so easy. This is also very useful for jumping around. Often, what happens is when we're working with code, you've got like different places where you're busy working. You're working on the dir filter here, so you can set a bookmark, Control-Shift-1. You also work on the table sorter, so you do Control-Shift-2 over here. And you also have to do something on the combo selection frame, so where you're working, you put Control-Shift-3. And so what you can then do is you can very easily jump between the different files by just pressing Control 1, 2, and 3. And of course, you can do Command E, which shows you the last opened files. Control-Shift-E is the last edited locations. So you can use that as well. But I just find this really handy to be able to jump around between different places very quickly. So I do this quite often, actually. Because quite often when you're working on a particular problem, you've got like 5 different places you're working on at the same time. Okay, this is what I wanted to say is the syntax-aware selection is the official Mac OS X is option up arrow. And now that means like this thumb and then really wide apart. I can hardly do it. Oh, I can do it with the right hand, but I use my right hand for my mouse, so that's not going to work. So a better approach is to use the classic version, which is Command W. The only problem is that on Mac, Command W closes your window. So you need to just remember that if you're using some other program, not to click that by mistake. But this works extremely well, this syntax-aware selection. So let's say, for example, I'm here. I want to select something here. Command W selects icon, then image icon, then the whole statement, the whole line, the more line, and so on. And so as you collect this, it's selecting more and more of your class until eventually you've selected the whole file. And then Command Shift W reverses that again. This is really amazing. I use this a lot, as you saw. The thing is also that because you have to hit it quite often to do what you need to do, it actually doesn't. It's slightly inflated because I have to hit it like 10 times to select what I want to select. So it's just like dot, 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 and then undo again. But I use it a lot every single day. Moving code up and down, Control Shift up and down, moves it up and down. And the funny thing with that is, like moving it up and down here, no problem, is if I'm on a line, whatever action I'm doing applies to that line. So this is moving it up. If I cut it, it's cutting that line. So I don't have to first select the line and then cut it. I can just cut it, and it's cut. So this is a really nice feature of IntelliJ. And it's the same for copying, for moving lines up and down. All right. One thing which is really useful as well is you can write your own templates. So you can then select some code and say Control-Alt-J or Control-Alt-T for surrounded with template, and then you can specify, then you can surround it with your own template. It's context aware, so for example, if you're in Java code, it's going to offer for you to surround it with callable or a lock or write block or so on. And so what I did, for example, I always like using, if I want to have a main method, I always want to have it with public static void main with var args. I don't like this. I like saying dot dot dot. Oh, it keeps on dot 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 args. Why? Because then if I want to call the main method from somewhere else, I don't have to pass in any arguments. I can just call it with arguments. And so to do that, simply go to live templates here, and we go to Java, and here you'll find the main method. Where's PSVM main? This one. This one will change to dot dot dot, and also the PSVM, that one as well. Unfortunately, they do it in two. I keep on hitting the wrong button here. There we go. And now, if I do public static void main, it's changed. So it's now got dot dot dot. So you can write your own very easily as well. For example, what happens if I, or how long does it take to start a bunch of virtual threads, right? So if I want to measure that, I can say long time equals system.nanotime and work it all out. So I want to now make, let's just say over here, try var pool equals executors to those.new virtual thread source executor. I'm going to make a long adder over here, count equals new long adder. And then inside the pool, I'm going to say pool.submit count.increment. Let's do that a million times, or a million times rather. Don't want to be all day. So I'm making a million virtual threads. Each of them is going to call count increment on it. And then afterwards, we'll see how long it takes. So to measure the time is kind of awkward. Of course, you could use JMH to measure it and so on. But ideally, what I want to do is measure it very, very easily. So I could work out the time before and time afterwards and measure all. But what I did was I wrote a little script here that I use every single day when I do talks and courses. And this is how it looks. you go to live templates, you go plus live templates, and you say in here, for example, what did I call it? Nano time. Description is system.nanotime. And then here's a template text. The applicable context is Java. I think it's a Java statement. I think that's right. It's either statement or expression, not exactly sure which one. Let's do both, what does it matter? Reformat according to style, edit variables, time default value will be time, and okay. So very simple. And then what I can do is I can select my code here, Control Alt J, and hit the N, and now it's, oh no, that's not quite right. It's not that time, although that's a good reminder, thank you. It should be, I think, double quote time. Can't remember exactly. Or I'll just leave it out. Let's try it again. There we go. So now it's got the time in there. And so I can very quickly generate a template like that in order to try it out. Control-Shift-F10 then runs it, and bingo, there can see how long it takes to start 1 million virtual threads and increment the count. So this is now under a second. That's not bad. Okay. How are we doing for time? 10 minutes ago. All right. This is something else which is quite fun, is column selection. It's a very cool little feature. And since I've last given this talk, I've actually found one more way of doing this. So let me show you. So let's go and edit something. So we'll go and find a class somewhere. Let's go to the model. Database, no, that's not a good one. Let's go to PPT. This is a good one. I didn't write this code. Somebody else wrote this code. But what I want to do is I want to change all this to a list of string, okay, for example. So I can hold Alt down and drag the mouse, and they have selected the columns. Okay? And I can type list of string, for example. Okay? So this is very, very useful. Or I can, now if I do that, if I let go of the mouse, then it becomes, again, normal drag and drop. There's nothing special here. Or what I can do is I can press the column selection. Down at the bottom over here, you'll see column going on. There's like a column down here, and now it's column mode. So if I go down, I can move the cursor up and down, and I can say list of string. This is actually the more powerful mode than the mouse mode. It's really powerful. You can edit code very nicely like that. And then the other way, which I discovered the other day, was, well, I didn't discover, somebody told me about this, is if I'm then up hit Alt twice, it temporarily goes into the column mode, and I can then move this around like so. So this is also very nice. Let's go back to what we had, like that. So that's all very powerful to make it more productive. The column mode certainly is useful. I've used that very often. Just if you're turning on the column selection, make sure to turn it off again afterwards. Otherwise, you're going to be very surprised by your ID. I'll come back to this demo. Oh, maybe I should do this quickly. Okay, so the demo. Let's see how far we are. I'll skip the demo because I've got enough demos for now. Okay, tips for speakers. Make sure the fonts are big enough. Also, I've set up a shortcut key for presentation mode. So Command-Alt-P. Zooms in, takes away all the fluff from the outside. This is very, very nice. And you can specify the zoom factor in if you go to appearance behavior, presentation mode there. Also, what I do is I normally have different color schemes for different resolutions, so it's easy to switch around. But you can also use control tilt or back quote to change the font zoom level to be different. So that's also very nice. The one thing you've got to be careful of, though, and I've seen this happen, unfortunately, to others. It hasn't happened to me yet. I've not managed to be caught out yet, but sometimes you go to companies which have got really bad projectors, and or conferences, and the only thing that you can see is black on white. That's it. Nothing else works. And so far, I've not had to give this talk on a presentation like that, but I'd be dead in the water, because this looks fairly decent on this screen, except you've got the lines in between. It's not so nice. But it would be an absolute disaster on some screens where you can't see black. Because, I mean, face it, what color is this, right? What color is that? It's white, right? If you turn off the screen, okay, this is not such a good example, but on a normal projector, that would be white, right? You can't project black, only project white. So this is something for projectors to know. Be careful of that. Also, make sure the fonts are easily readable on a smartphone. That's sort of the size you want to go for. Okay, there are different types of code completion. There's normal control space, which turns on automatically. But there's also the problem with control space is that it shows you options which don't even work. Like I'm saying demo list string names equals new, and it says, would you like to use array list, linked list, how about if you use demo or string? It's got nothing to do with the list. It shouldn't be offered, but it's offered. So if you press Control Shift space, it actually does a better job. It only shows you things which are lists. It only shows what fits over there. So that's what I normally use, Control Shift space, to get better results. Also, refactoring is one of the really big things with IntelliJ. They've had this from the beginning as a very important part of the language, of the IDE. And F6 moves, Shift F6 renames, Control F6 applies to method for changing signatures, and Control Alt M extracts a method. Now, when you extract a method, there are some restrictions. It doesn't always work. For example, if you have more than one return value, it won't work. Ideally, what it should do is it should simply make a record and return the record. You're done. But it doesn't. It's not that clever. Also, your block must represent a set of statements or expressions. But there are some benefits. If you extract a method, it can discover other similar code. And that's quite handy. So I'm going to show you a quick demo here. In the PCD generator, I'm going to look at the generate PCD remarks. So let's generate PCD remarks. And as I type, it finds the right method for me. And so you see here's the code, and the three parts look very similar. If I select this and I say extract method, get result 1, okay, good, we've done that. Now do the second one as well, Control-M, get result 2, and it says, you know what, there's something very similar. Don't you want to refactor that as well? And I say, yeah, let's do that, let's do that, yeah, go for it. And it all gets broken. It doesn't work. Yeah. So all this great fun of, hey, I'm going to refactor, and it doesn't work. Right? So there it's like underlined, sorry, might not have initialized. The whole thing is just broken. So you've got to start from the beginning. So the tip for this is you need to learn a bit, and I can't tell you exactly how it works, but you've got to, if you change the code a little bit so that it's easier for the IDE to refactor that, it'll make the IDE's job easier, right? It's not as smart as we are at the moment. So if, for example, I put this into code block and this into code block, right? So now it looks very, very similar. And this into code block, string. So I've got 3 code blocks which look virtually the same. And now I select that and I extract that as a method and I say get result, fetch result, or actually not a good name, a remark, not result. Then it says, hey, do you want to replace these? And it's done them all. Now I need to get a bit different name. Fetch remark is better. But now I can take these away and we're good to go. So this is very handy, and I can be Command F6. I can rename this to be column name, and it's managed to fetch the remarks. So simply by preparing it a bit to make it easier, you can do the refactoring much, much better. Because otherwise you'd end up with a complete mess and everything's red and nothing works anymore. Okay? You can inline code that's opposite. That's quite handy. And also very useful is the code analyzer. This helps you to inspect the code to make sure that you find all sorts of errors. And you can use it for finding all sorts of glaring code inconsistencies. So this is not my code, and somebody else wrote it, allowed me to use it. So I can say analyze and spec code, and I can say, just look for the default, just search for the default. And it looks at all the code, tries to find things that it thinks we could do better. That's what it does over here. And it says, code style issues, you could do this better, field could be final, size equals 0 could be as empty, etc., etc. And then you can change it. You can replace it all. You can fix it all quite nicely. All right. And they also have migration aids, so you can easily change to new versions. And whilst you're working it, it'll give you suggestions of what to change. That's all very useful. So we're done with the 45 minutes. I didn't want to go over the time. I've got another talk coming after mine. We do have time for 1 or 2 questions, though, if anybody has any questions.
Are there any questions, comments, any tips that you have that you haven't seen mentioned?
And if you're not on my newsletter, you should sign up, javaspecialist.edu.
Yeah, so you're showing all these shortcuts. Have you used the Vim plugin, or because I use it?
I use Vim every single day, but not as a plugin.
All right.
Right.
What is the plugin? Tell us about it. Yeah, I'm mostly using Vim as well, but I really like the code navigation on it. So
yeah, definitely.
I've seen these shortcuts, but I thought maybe you had an opinion about that. So
yeah, there's another thing which people use, which is the key promoter. Yeah. And it's like having somebody who doesn't know how to drive a car sit in the back seat telling you how to drive the car, like all the time. So it's like, I put it on, I can't stand it, so put it off. But you might like it.
Any comments, questions, additional tips, hints? Yes, somebody in the back. Sergey Famiro.
I have a simple question. Which came up you prefer, IntelliJ Classic or modern IntelliJ? Because they're quite different, and I use it for so many years. So I prefer the old one. So maybe some recommendation.
Yeah, I spent a lot of effort getting my slides to look like IntelliJ Classic. So now I'm stuck with that for now. But I see some advantages of the new one. The contrast is stronger. So I think it's something one can easily get used to, the new version. At the moment, I'm like a bit lost when looking at it, but it's like everything, you just get used to it.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, make sure you sign up to my newsletter, javaspecialist.eu.
A quick question over here.
Oh, another question. All right.
Not a question, but rather a tip. So you mentioned that you don't know a way to enable single click to open the files. So if you open an action command menu with Command Shift A, you can just type the name of the action.
Control Shift A.
Command Shift A.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, and type the single click, whatever, without enable, just. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, you can actually do it that way. Okay.
So Command Shift A is the shortcut to go if you don't know the shortcut.
Or you can just do Shift Shift.
That will be all, not actions.
Yeah, but sure, but you'll find it that way too. So yeah, I didn't know they could do that. Interesting, thank you. That's why I say I always learn something new. But you can't click on this thing without the mouse. But you can probably do this one here as well. Flatten modules. I'm sure you can do all of those with that. Flatten packages. Oh, there you go. So you can do it that way. Thank you. A power user. So I can throw away my mouse now.
Any other comments, thoughts? Yes, excellent.
Yeah, so it's maybe a tip. For me, the best plugin is GitHub Copilot. But what I learned is that sometimes like Java IntelliJ complete is kind of annoying. So another tip. So I disabled like IntelliJ code completion, and just to let Copilot to start suggesting next token from the scratch. Because usually, like IntelliJ suppress Copilot and just expect user to select like shortcut from IntelliJ. But if you continue typing, then Copilot activates. But it kind of takes extra seconds that you could disable in settings and just activate Copilot straight from the beginning. So I can't remember how to do in setting, but if you Google, you would find it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and fuel up on the beer and then come back again for the next talk. Thank you, Heinz.